We have so far already implemented a command in two of the buttons, well, one button and one toolbar item that we have inside of the interface. But we still have three event handlers assigned to three different buttons that we have to replace for commands. One is inside of the main page, and I'm talking about the register button because we already replaced the event handler for the login button for a command. But we still have that register button left. In the register page, we also have the register button that currently has a clicked event handler. We also have to replace this for a command. And finally, in the new travel page, we have a toolbar item. And the toolbar item also still has an event handler for which we have to create now a command. And that is your challenge. It is your challenge to create and assign the corresponding view models and commands. You already know how to create commands, and you even know how to create commands that receive parameters. That is pretty much everything that you need to know about commands. Now it's time for you to use what you have learned and implement the commands for these three remaining buttons, replacing the functionality that is currently inside of an event handler and moving that same exact functionality to a command. Of course, we're going to be solving it throughout this lecture, but first I want you to pause the video, go ahead and try for yourself, and once you're ready, or if you get stuck somewhere, you can come back and check out how we solve this. Okay, so by now I assume that you have already at least tried, maybe some of you already succeeded, and you want to know how we solve this. So I am going to start with the main page. The main page already has a view model, the view model that we use to assign a command to the login button. We need something very similar for the button, but this one is not even going to require a command parameter. So it's actually going to be more similar to the navigation command that we have for the home VM. But inside of the main VM, we're also going to need a functionality that is going to navigate to the corresponding section or the corresponding page. So all the way to the bottom, right after the login method, I am going to define another public void method, and this is going to be navigate. It's going to receive no parameters, and this is going to navigate the user to the register page. We have to access the current property from the app class, which has the main page, which has the navigation, and from which we can call the push async method. And to this method, we have to pass the page to which we want to navigate, in this case, a new instance of the register page. Now, we can choose to await for the execution of this method, because it is an async method. In that case, I would have to make this navigate method an async method as well. And so now we have the functionality that is going to be executed when that button is pressed. It's time for us to create the command for that button. So in the commands folder, I am going to right click and I am going to add a new class. And this one is going to be called register navigation command. And of course, this class will have to be public and we'll have to implement the iCommand interface. For that, we need to add a using directive and to implement its three members. Like we said, this command is not going to require a parameter, so we can right from the beginning return true. This method is always going to be available. It's not going to depend on anything like the login button does. And in the execute method, we will have to call the navigate method that we have just created inside of the main VM class. For that, I am going to define a variable. It can be private since we're only going to be using it locally. It's going to be of type main VM, and this is going to be called viewModel. Then I will need to define the constructor for this class, because in the constructor, I will need to receive an instance of that class. So in the body for the constructor, I can access the viewModel that is inside of the class through this.viewModel and assigned the value that is being received as a parameter to that viewModel. And now that we have this viewModel, from the execute method, I can access the navigate method, which requires no parameters and is simply going to navigate the user to the corresponding page, in this case, the register page. So we have implemented the functionality for this new I command, the register navigation command. But we also need a property of that type inside of this main VM class. We already have one property of one command, so I am going to define another property. This time the type has to be register navigation command, and I'm going to be calling this property register navigation command. And just like we did with the login command, in the constructor for this class, we're going to initialize the register navigation command to be a new register navigation command. And the constructor is going to require a parameter of type main VM, and we can pass this just like we did with the login command. And that's it, our view model is pretty much ready. All we have to do now is go to the main page.saml.cs file, where we actually already have the main VM variable. It's being initialized and it's being set as the binding context for the entire application. So all we have to do now is go to the SAML file, and to this button I am going to get rid of the event handler first, and then I am going to assign a command. This is also going to be binding, but this time we're going to be binding to the register navigation command. So let's take a look at the functionality. This has to be the exact same functionality that we had before. And actually, before running, let me just cancel the build. I want to get rid of that event handler that we had before, which is this one. The register user button underscore clicked, which all it did was push the navigation to the register page. This functionality is already available from the corresponding view model. This way, the code behind for the view, for the main page view, is now much cleaner. Now, let me run this on the simulator, and you can see that because we're always returning true, the register button is active. And if we click on it, we get navigated to the register page, just like before. And if we click on back, we get navigated to the main page. So the functionality is the exact same functionality that before, only this time the functionality is on the view model. And our view, the code behind for the view, is much cleaner. Let's now implement the functionality for the next button. We have two buttons to go. Let's move to the register page, where we have the register button and we have 3 entries. But only 2 of them are bound to a property, the email and the password properties, which come directly from the user object that we have. But we also need the confirm password entries value that we currently are not getting because we're not binding it anywhere. So the first thing that I will need is to change the definition of the user class, so it has a confirmed password. Instead of the user, we are already implementing the iNotify property changed. We have the email, we have a password, but we do not have a confirmed password. All I'm going to do is copy the definition of this password property, and right below it, I'm going to paste it and rename it as confirmed password. Remember to return this new confirmed password and set the confirmed password to the value, and the name of the property itself also has to change, and you have to change the value that is being sent to the onPropertyChanged method. With this property ready, now I can head back to the main page, and the entry, more specifically the confirmed password entry, is going to be binding its text to the confirmed password, and the mode is going to be two-way. Of course, this is just the beginning. What we need is to go to the view model and create a new command. So I am going to add a new class in the commands folder that is going to be called register command. This class has to be public and it has to implement the iCommand interface. We add the using directive and we implement the interface. So we have the 3 members. And the first thing that I want to do is evaluate the object itself that is being received as a parameter in the canExecute method, because this time it is going to be of type user. We need to add the using directive to the user's namespace, and the user is simply going to be the object parsed as a user, like this, just like we did in the login command. This time the evaluation that I want to make is if the user's password is equal to the user's confirmed password. And actually, before this evaluation, I have to make sure that the user is not null. So if user is different than null, then I can go ahead and make this evaluation like this. And if it were to be null, I am just going to be returning false. Moving on with the evaluation about the passwords being the same, I am actually going to be returning false if this